everyone. I'm Andrea Donsky, host of New Hope Network's Soapbox series. And today I'm here with Birgit Cameron, Global Director for Patagonia Provisions. Welcome to the show, Birgit.
Hi, Andrea. Thanks so much for having me. It's really great to be here.
Birgit, Patagonia is an iconic brand, and many of us are very familiar with it. But for those who aren't familiar with the Provisions division, can you tell us a little bit about how it's different from Patagonia?
Sure. Yeah, most people think of Patagonia as just the apparel side, the apparel company. But when you think of Patagonia as more of an environmental company, because we are very activist in many areas around the recognition that our planet really needs some help, and our mission statement is really we are in business to save our home planet. We couldn't really stay away from other areas that are really big contributors to this climate issue that we're in now. So on the apparel side, in relation to ag, it was cotton, Ulex, wool, hemp, all these things that are really important to bring over to organic production, those kinds of things. But what we realized along the way was that agriculture, as it relates to food, that's one of the biggest contributors to climate change. And so we couldn't stay away, and we decided that building a food company was going to be the very best way to start to talk about these issues and show through food that we can do things differently. So it's really about rethinking the way we make our food, the way we harvest it, the way we grow it, and adding in things like regenerative organic practices that become this very high bar to drawing down carbon, adding in practices that allow additional species to thrive and exist in the way that they should, get pesticides out of our food system, these kinds of things. And so everything we make at Patagonia Provisions has a really deep reason for being. Our wild salmon is about making sure we have wild salmon in our future, because we harvest differently. We put together a whole committee of scientists and biologists and people in the industry to really rethink how we take from the ocean. Our bison, our buffalo jerky, those kinds of products are about saving the Great Plains, because the prairie is one of the biggest sequesters of carbon next to the rainforest.
Birgit, one of the questions that while you're speaking, that came to mind for me is how have Patagonia's consumers embraced Patagonia Provisions? Is it the same consumer? Is it a different consumer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what food does is it brings in a broader audience, actually. So it's something where food touches everybody. Not everybody thinks of apparel as an agricultural product, and even though we've been deeply involved in moving organic, cotton to organic and adding all these elements to agriculture in that realm, food touches everybody, right? Food it's an immediate connection to how your grapes are grown for wine, how your food is grown, making sure there's no pesticides in residue in your food, all these things that you immediately grab onto and gravitate to. So I think what it does is it sort of broadens the conversation around the important things that we've been focused on for years and years. And it also brings in new community because it's a touch point that everybody can relate to, no matter who you are.
I love that there is a specific mission there, and you're selective with the products that you're actually launching. Now, you mentioned salmon, you mentioned bison. What are some other products in the Provisions line?
Well, as I said, with each product, we like to tell a story about a different way of doing something. And so some of the other products include our savory seeds, which we've launched last year, for instance, and that really tells the story of intercropping, things like lentils and then buckwheat, which addresses pollinators, the importance for these kinds of crops to be growing as an intercrop within a regenerative organic system, and then also providing a really good habitat for bees. And so the savory seeds are sort of all about that, those regenerative practices. We also have a tin fish line that includes mussels and mackerel. And then coming out in the new year, we will have a Spanish white anchovy. And again, that one is about eating lower on the food chain. So by taking pressure off of the tunas, the bigger fish, and eating more forage fish, we can really help these species rebound.
Just listening to you speak is making me hungry, because everything that you mentioned, I absolutely love. So I think that's amazing. Now, you've mentioned it a couple times. You've talked about the Regenerative Organic Alliance, your certification. Can you go into a little bit more detail about it and explain exactly what it is and how we can learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Regenerative Organic Alliance and the Regenerative Organic Certification was started by us and Dr. Bronner's in concert with the Rodale Institute and other entities, scientific and otherwise, and farmers coming together to really build something, a criteria that is this North Star that I talk about. And what it is, it encompasses the trinity of soil health, animal welfare, and social fairness. And then it's, so each product that we make or ingredient we bring in, we're trying to bring this sort of very high bar level of thinking about how it's grown, how it's harvested, how it's made, who are the people involved, because we really feel that if all of that is taken care of, if soil health, for instance, is at its highest bar function, you can actually draw down more carbon. The farmer isn't sick from pesticide application. So it's beginning with organic, and then you add these regenerative functions. The pollinators are there for us, who are responsible for a third of our food supply. Huge. If we let that go, that's a real problem for our next generations, and even probably within this generation.
What's pretty impressive to me is that it sounds like Patagonia Provisions is a mission-based company that has products rather than a product-based company with a mission. So that's really kudos to you, because that is definitely what stands out while we're speaking today, for me at least.
Thanks for noting that. Yeah, that was a really important thing when I wrote the business plan and was sort of planning out what would a food company look like for Patagonia. It really was that idea that we're not going to build product from trend, just because something is hot right now. That's nice, and if something falls in that realm, that's great. But if we go from this mindset of building from a solution first, it also is such an exciting way to go, because you see the impact of what you're doing, and that there, you realize that we get away from just because we know how to do things in certain ways, and we've done things in certain ways for forever. It kind of shifts to this idea of like, wow, discovery, innovation, right? There's more out there to learn about and create, and what does this tell us? And then all the while doing something great for people and great for the planet, right? High bar nutrition, deliciousness, coupled with this idea that we can actually change our future and be game changers in that regard. It's more of an innovative mindset, as opposed to falling back on the status quo.
Yeah, well, very apparent. So thank you for sharing that as well. I have one last question for you. How do you, Birgit Cameron, spark change?
Well, hell, I think it's if we pass on that idea of building a business to save our home planet, right? That's not something that we should just keep to ourselves. That's something that we're hoping other people adopt this kind of thinking. If we go right down to the very beginning of our supply chains, from seed to end product, if we can help people get to that kind of thinking, that's a win. We want people to adopt maybe some of the things that we're innovating around, to come on in and like I said, really work toward a collective action around this. And so I hope that does spark change. I hope that does spark a different way of thinking about the food industry and what we as a community can actually achieve together.
Thank you so much for being on our show today. We really appreciate it. And I appreciated meeting you and learning about everything that Patagonia Provisions is doing. So thank you.
Thank you for being interested. I really appreciate that.
And thanks to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time on New Hope Network's Soapbox series. Stay well.